pain or high gain or high pain, if those are not responded to by the attachment figure, those can lead to permanent injuries. So I'll give you an example of a high gain moment. Senior graduation, parents don't show. On the basketball team, right? I made 32 points, my parents didn't come. Times of high gain are just as significant as times of high gain. Times of high gain are moments in which we need to feel like someone is with us to share that experience with us. Someone that can enjoy us and our accomplishments more than anybody else can. Times of high pain is for them to be there for us, to be a national antidote to comfort us in the midst of our pain. And it's amazing how the body works, how the body responds to the presence of somebody else. And so we are the Prozac for each other, right? And we are the dopamine for each other. We bring down the pain and we shoot up excitement. And for my son Logan, I had to reframe that. So that Logan could, he could be attached to me and not be afraid of nurseries for the rest of his life. You see him as an adult dropping his kids off, right? No nursery! No nursery! And his kid dragging him to the nursery. So he's pretty well adjusted now, thanks be to God. He's a good kid. But we'll tell him about the story and he'll call us horrible parents. Pretty funny. All right, so where did attachment theory come from? So Valerie and I are going to just demonstrate a little bit where attachment theory came from. So John Bowlby in the 1950s, so he's far gone, dead, and you have to be dead before something gets popular. And when it comes to theory, and so he's been gone for a while. But he was an actual, he was a product of Freud. He worked with Freud and Adler, and he left the Freudian Institute because he did not believe that we were driven by primarily psychosocial sexual desires, right, and compulsions. He believed that it was much more social, and that so he went on his own and he went overseas to the hospitals in Europe. And at the time, in the 1950s, in hospitals in Europe, they didn't allow parents to come into the units. And so he would videotape the parents dropping off the children, and the children reunifying with their parents. And so he was just making observation as to why why certain kids act certain ways when they're dropped off, and why they act certain ways when they came back together. So really, his theory was built on this. So we'll show you kind of what this looked like. So coming up to Valerie. So when parents are dropping the children off, children were very different the way they would leave their parents. And some of the children were very scared upon the parent dropping them off. They were going to be left there for a while to some degree. And so they would act very clingy. So they would grab onto the parent, they grab on like Logan did to my leg, they grab on their wood, and the nurses would grab.
This has not been rehearsed. What am I supposed to be doing?
Don't worry, you're doing good. Just do yourself. And then they would be pulling their legs and trying to get them off of them, and so then they would take them back to the unit. And other children, when they were dropped off, they would just be pretty indifferent to the parent, and so they would turn away and they just walk away without any big deal, right? And so you had the spectrum of kids clinging and these kids just leaving. And so the kids that cling, they'd go onto the unit, and they had this thing that they would do pretty consistently is they go into deep depression, and they would isolate themselves in their cribs or wherever else they had placed them in their beds, and they would suck on their thumbs, and they would almost go back into more infantile posture, and they would want to touch anybody, they wouldn't want to engage with anybody, they wouldn't want to eat. And then about 2 or 3 days, a week later, they all of a sudden seemed like they just woke up. And they would start to re-engage with everybody as if everything was okay. And so the nurses and the doctors thought, well, this is just a period of adjustment. There's no long-term impact on this. Kind of like Logan, right, during the week. No big deal. Until the parents came back to get them. And then when the parents came back to pick them up, what he noticed is that the parents would show up, and let's say a child that was very clingy when they left would run up to the parent, run. And rather than hugging the parents, they would beat on them. Yes, beat on me. So they would beat on them in almost this like fashion of protest. Like, you were supposed to be here for me, and you left me here. And they would like run up to them, they'd push them away, and they were like very angry at the parents. The parents would try to hold them, they wouldn't accept a hug, and they would just be pushing them away, right? And then there are other kids, I would go back over there, you're another kid. And there are other kids, they would walk up, and the parents would be like, hey, I'm here. And they would act incredibly different. They would turn, they'd be like, these are also kids that cling when they left. We now have turned to more different responses to the parents, which really concern the parents, right? I mean, think about the parent, right? You didn't change when you left for those 30 days. You came back excited to see your child, and also your child's indifferent to you. And so they were asking the doctors, what is going on? Like, what has happened to my child? They're so indifferent to me. And why are kids hitting us? And what in the world? This child that dropped off is very different than the child that I came to pick up. And their comfort level engaging with me. And it seems like they're angry or they're disconnected. And then they noticed that when these children went home, that their relationship with their parents changed too. And so John Bowlby decided that something significant happened in this sort of letting go. There's something about that bond and that relationship that was broken and dropping his kids off. And from the child's perspective, the child didn't know the difference between being dropped off for health reasons or just being dropped off for no reason, right? They couldn't process like an adult and say to themselves, oh, well, I'm sick and my parents can't come here because the rules of the hospital don't allow them to be here, but they really do love me and they'd be here if they could. These kids couldn't process that information. For all they knew, they were being dropped off and never picked up again. And left with strangers in white gowns, right, with masks, to stick them with needles, right? This is a pretty traumatic thing for a child. And so something had to happen in the child to be able to survive, right? They couldn't survive with the framework they had. And the framework that they had going into it was probably a framework that was wired for love. And in the process of being detached from their parents for this long period of time, and they're reuniting, you can see the adjustment in the framework that shifted from love to war. Adaptations were being made in the time that they were in the hospital to no longer depend on another person, but depend on themselves for their own comfort, safety, and security. They weren't reaching out to the nurses to get that. They're either reaching out, not reaching out to the nurses to get that, they're finding ways to soothe themselves, or the other is they're indiscriminately reaching out to the nurses. Nurses that didn't deserve them to be reaching out to them. Right? They're sitting in the nurses' laps when they just met them, holding them, hugging them. They were, and you see this with like reactive attachment children that are adopted from foster care and stuff like that. They will have indiscriminate attachment. You'll be a complete stranger will come up and sit in your lap, hug you, or tell you, do things that you say, well, no, you don't even know me, and this is really odd for you. And you think that they're just very friendly, but they're not. They actually have attachment issues. And then but when children walk up to you and they grab onto their parents and they look at you like you're a stranger, that's very healthy attachment behavior. It's not enmeshment. It's the fact that they're relying on the attachment figure as a secure base in which in order to feel safe again, because they don't have the capacity to care for themselves yet. So what's really interesting about this whole phenomenon is that when Bowlby, when he discovered this and started to create his theory around attachment, he thought it was just for kids. And then fast forward about 15, 20 years later, all of a sudden all the scientific research comes out and says, oh, whoa, wait a minute, this is not just kids. This theory goes from the cradle to the grave. We don't ever grow out our dependency for another. Just because we get bigger and care for ourselves doesn't mean that we stop depending on others, and that we are not suited to care for ourselves as well as someone else is suited to care for us. And just because you turn 18, you can brush your teeth, and you can drive, and you can go to the grocery store, and you can get a job, it doesn't mean that you are ever in a posture of being able to sustain yourself in the way that someone else can sustain you. It means that you have times in which you have autonomy that you can be separate from another and be okay. But it's the reunion and the leaving and the being together that makes life worth it, right? So it's much better if you're connected. So let me give you an example of this. Everyone put their arms up there. Okay, stretch. All right, good. Okay, so put your hands on your shoulders. And I want you to give yourself a massage. How's it feel? Awesome, right? Wrong. I mean, it's not horrible. It's not like you're hurting yourself. I hope not. It's just okay, right? And so I had you guys turn each other. You can if you want. Turn each other and stick your hands. Only for those you appropriately can do that with. Put your hands above the shoulders, right? Now, how does that feel compared to the other?
Better.
It's better, right? So just think about this. This is just a great analogy for what it means to be in relationships that suit each other. We are anatomically perfect, right? This is not perfect. I can't even get my elbows to do this right, but my hands are perfect for you. I can get my thumb right in your back, get it right up on your neck, and rub your head, and you're just like, "Ugh, this is amazing." Right? Like, I am designed perfectly to soothe you. Right? You know, you can't tickle yourself. But someone else can tickle you. Like, you try, you can't tickle yourself. You just can't. It's not funny. It doesn't. As soon as someone else goes, "Whoop," you go, "Ah!" Right? And so these are just great examples of what it sort of like. We were made in the Trinity of God. We were designed to be giving and receiving constantly in this dance of mutual giving and receiving. And in that dance, we are better equipped, comforted, and cared for in the presence of another than we can do for ourselves. So we look at our culture, right? This is part of why we have job security. Our culture is masterful at self-soothing. We have found so many ways. Our economy, honestly, is probably built on an economy of self-soothing. Shopping, eating, exercise, drinking, pornography. We go on and on. We could probably almost take the whole diagnostic manual and boil it down to much of it being about self-soothing behaviors. Behaviors that we take on to soothe ourselves in the absence of someone doing that effectively for us. It's like we eat candy. We find temporary solutions to our emotional problems, and then our emotional problems just get worse. It's a cycle, right? If I drink too much, then I feel horrible about drinking too much. I'm a horrible person, so I drink more. And then I feel worse and worse, then I drink more and more. And so the temporary solutions, they're self-soothing solutions, always create worse problems that need more self-soothing. So it comes to a place where you need help. You end up where you should have started, which is dependent upon other people. Right? You should have started with a dependency, but maybe that person wasn't safe to depend on, but there wasn't really anyone there to be able to depend on, or you didn't have a history of being able to depend on anyone very well, and so you just don't have that particular love reflex in you to depend. It's like super scary. Even if they have an invitation for you to depend on them, you don't want to do it because culture also doesn't tell you to, particularly for men in our culture. Men in our culture, man, you don't make it through junior high by depending on the other people. Right? You're not in the locker room going after a football game, I was really hurt when that guy hit me. And I just could really use a hug right now. Right? That's just not going to happen. Nobody's talking about that. You know, but junior high, for girls, for the most part, you make it junior high without doing that. Right? All the talking, you're like, they did that? No, it's okay. And all that goes on. And so our culture really is horrible at supporting men to be securely attached. What's really interesting, because part of the attraction that some women have to men is the strength that appears to come with being insecurely attached. Because securely attached men can be very strong, but they also can be very vulnerable and can be very broken. My wife's favorite character in the whole history of television, the most secure person that she's ever seen, and she wishes I was him every day of our entire marriage. It's Charles Ingalls. From Little House on the Prairie. Right? How many of you guys have seen Charles Ingalls' Little House on the Prairie? If you have not, you need to go watch Charles Ingalls. He's like the perfect balance between strong and vulnerable. One minute he is crying, next minute he's wrestling bears. Right? So he's doing both of these things, and it's like my wife would watch this and she'd be like, "Oh, I just love Charles. Look how tender he is with his wife, and he wrestles bears, and he's plowing fields, but he'll pause to be with his children." I'm like, oh my gosh. This is really early on in our marriage. I'm like, I cannot be Charles Ingalls. Could he be a horse? So it's kind of like that balance that's beautiful within men. And so, but so much of our culture is perpetuated. Strength is appearing one way, and it's very independent, very unhealthy independent. And so there's a sense that I need to be strong, and that for me to need something from my partner is weak. It's I remember when I was in college. You know, those couples would walk around with their arms around each other all the time. Oh gosh, they'd be crazy. We call them the Velcro couples. Right? They walk by and we'd say things under our breath, like, "Gross, get over," all that kind of stuff. And so, only to come to find out later, they're probably more securely attached than we were, because we're making fun of them. Now, there might have been some of their own issues, but they had held on to each other all the time. But it's out of this state of dependency that we actually become independent. And I think we do value independency, because independency can be very good.